All right, the first question I want to ask you is, why are you here? I don't mean why are you here tonight. I mean, why are you here on earth? What is the purpose of your life? This is the interactive portion of the program. I mean, why are we here? Is life just a glorified Monopoly game? You get a whole bunch of stuff now because when the game is over, it's all going to go back in the box. I mean, if atheism's true, if we're just molecules in motion and one day we die and just become worm food, there is no real meaning to life. In fact, one preacher to his congregation put it this way. He said, one day you are going to die. And they're going to put you in your best suit or your best outfit. They're going to put you in a box. They're going to dig a hole. They're going to put that box into that hole. Then they're going to throw dirt in your face and go back to the church and eat potato salad. Is that it? You just take a dirt nap for all eternity? There is no real meaning to life? Again, if atheism is true, there's no meaning to life. I actually think there is a real meaning to life, and you can find that meaning in this ancient collection of manuscripts we've put under one binding we now call the Bible. Now, when you say the Bible is true on college campuses where I spend most of my time, people look at you like you're nuts. What, are you kidding me? First of all, this book has miracles in it. Miracles don't occur. We've proven that. Miracles don't happen. And it's written by religious people who made it up. They wrote it down much later after the events occurred. It's just full of myths and fables. You can't believe this book is true. I actually believe it is true. And I think you only have to answer 4 questions in the affirmative to say that this book is true. In other words, if you answer yes to these 4 questions, you can show beyond any reasonable doubt that the Bible is true. Not beyond all doubt, but beyond a reasonable doubt. What are the 4 questions? Here are the 4 questions. Now that is some pretty grooving music, isn't it? Yeah. That is actually from our TV show, which is on every Wednesday night. So it's on actually right now, 9 p.m. Eastern. Would that be here at 6 p.m.? Oh, it just got over. Okay, and it's on again tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern. So if you go home tonight and you have DirecTV channel 378, you can see it. How many people here have DirecTV? Can I see your hands, please? DirecTV. Like 4 of us. Why not the rest of us? Come on, friends, don't let friends watch cable. If you want to I don't have enough faith to be an atheist, you got to get DirecTV. Actually, that's not true. If you go to our website right there, crossexamine.org, click on Media and TV, you can watch the show streaming live. You got to be on your computer at the time. It's not archived. Or you can go to our website and get the DVD if you want. We're also on radio, and well, by the way, we're on Saturday night too. We're also on radio every Saturday morning. Here it'd be 7 a.m., but that's no big deal because it's podcasted. You can listen to it anytime you want. We actually have a new app now, the Cross-Examined app, where all the podcasts are right there. You can listen to it anytime you want. And what we do is we present evidence for Christianity and we cross-examine ideas against it. Now, why are these the 4 questions? Truth, God, miracles, and the New Testament. Well, obviously, if there is no truth, if it's just true for you but not for me, or all truth is relative, then this book can't be true. Of course, if there is no truth, then any book written by an atheist can't be true either, right? Obviously, there's truth. We'll deal with that briefly. Second question, does God exist? You can't have a word from God if there's no God. If there's no God, throw the Bible away. I hope to show you tonight that there really is a spaceless, timeless, immaterial, powerful, moral, personal, intelligent creator out there. We're going to look at 3 arguments. 2 have scientific evidence behind them. 1 is more philosophical in nature. These arguments are taught in the Bible, but you don't need the Bible to know them. In fact, for most of the evening, we're not even going to be talking about the Bible. We're going to go through these arguments and conclude that this theistic God actually exists. The third question is, are miracles possible? Obviously, this book can't be true if miracles are not possible. But I hope to show you tonight that the greatest miracle in the Bible has already occurred, and we have scientific evidence for it. Then and only then can we get to the key question, is the New Testament true? The New Testament doesn't have a prayer. If truth doesn't exist, God doesn't exist, or miracles are not possible. But if truth exists, God exists, and miracles are possible, then we can see if we have an accurate, historically reliable account of miracles occurring in the first century to a man named Jesus and his apostles in the 27 handwritten Greek manuscripts we've put under one binding we now call the New Testament. Did those people really tell us the truth, or did they embellish it? They make it up much later. We're going to look at that at the end of the evening. Now, I'll get it. Now, some of you are saying, well, what about the Old Testament? Do you believe the Old Testament's true? Well, the book goes into more detail than what we can do here tonight. But yes, the Old Testament's true if the New Testament's true. Why? Who's in the New Testament that could authenticate the Old Testament? Jesus. If Jesus really is God, as the New Testament documents claim he is, now that's a big if, but if he really is God, then whatever God teaches is true. Jesus taught the entire Old Testament as the Word of God, so if the New Testament's reliable, you get the Old Testament thrown in, okay? Now, even in the amount of time we have here tonight, there's no way I can summarize all this information. It's all in the book. The book is 448 pages. Actually, I probably could go through the entire book tonight because I'm originally from New Jersey, which means I speak at 150 words a minute with gusts to 350, okay? So if you can't keep up, no problem. The book is available on the book table, as well as actually a 12-part DVD series that's over 7 hours long in total, and it goes through all this material from our TV show, all the PowerPoints, so you can spend a lot more time on it than what we can do here tonight. I'm leaving a lot out tonight. And there's even a curriculum you can get on our website and a workbook if you want to go through this material on your own. Oh, by the way, all the proceeds from the sale of the books and the DVDs will go to feed needy children. Mine. Okay? Just so you know. I've got 3 sons. In fact, 2 of them are already through college. I still have 1 in college. They all went to the University of South Carolina, even though we live in North Carolina. And the oldest 2 are interested in the military. Now, I was in the Navy, which stands for Never Again Volunteer Yourself. Actually, I love the Navy, but it's not really good for family life. So when my sons came to me and said, hey, we want to go in the military, what should we do? I said, look, if you want to fight, go Navy. If you want a nice life, go Air Force. So they went Air Force. In fact, my oldest son is an intelligence officer with the guys that fly the drones in Las Vegas. Did you know that all the drones that are flown in the war zones today are flown from Las Vegas? And you thought there was no real-world application for Xbox. There is. The second son just got his wings in the Air Force just about a month or so ago, and he's going to be flying KC-10s out of Travis Air Force Base here in a couple of months. In fact, providentially, tonight, he's flying into Spokane because he's about to do some water survival and SEER school over there at Fairchild, right on the other side of Spokane. So I may actually get a chance to see him when I go to the airport tomorrow. The third son is not in the Air Force at all, but he's finishing his final year of college, which means my wife and I get a raise at the end of the year. That's right. And it also means that my wife and I, for about the past 3 years, have been empty nesters. Took us a while to get used to that. About 10 minutes. Yeah, that's how long it took to change the locks. Do we have any empty nesters in here? Yeah. You notice how clean the house stays when they're gone? It's amazing. You don't have to clean the kitchen for like 2 weeks when they're gone. When they're home, every 10 minutes. We love our kids, but they're a little messy. Anyway, there's our website, crossexamine.org, if you want more on this stuff. We're going to speed through the material here because, again, we have limited time, and this is normally 3.5 hours to go through all this. So we're not going to spend that much time. I'm going to leave a lot out. So if you want more, you can get the material, all right? We're going to start here. Oh, by the way, if I time this just right, we'll have absolutely no time for questions. No, we will have time for questions at the end. Well, I'll say, hey, it's time for Q&A. We'll have a mic, and you can ask anything you want. And actually, I think tonight we're going to do all Q, no A. How's that? Okay? So you guys, I'll go, hey, that's a great question. Next one? Oh, that's another good question. No, we'll do Q and A, all right? But we got to start here at point 1. Does truth exist? You guys ready to go? Yeah. All right. Now, whenever you start talking about truth, you always have to start with Jack Nicholson. Right? Tom Cruise had him on the witness stand, and he said to him, Colonel, I want the truth. And Nicholson said, you can't handle the truth. Actually, that was pretty good, but I think you can do better. Colonel, I want the truth. You can't handle the truth. That's very good. That's right. Well, there's a lot of people that can't handle the truth. They're saying, you got your truth, I got my truth, there is no truth, all truth is relative. Of course, if there's no truth or it's all relative, then the Bible can't be true. Any book written by an atheist can't be true. All right? Before we get into that, let's point out what truth is. Truth is telling it like it is. If I say here we are in Idaho, that would be telling it like it is. If I say here we are in Charlotte, North Carolina, where we'll be tomorrow, that wouldn't be telling it like it is. Or truth is what corresponds to its referent. If when referring to this book, I say this is a Bible, that would be true. If I say this is a Quran, that wouldn't be true. You say, Frank, I came out here for this. Since this is so obvious, why are you starting here? Because our first duty in today's culture is to state the obvious. There's people out there denying there's truth. I'm here to say that all truth is absolute truth. Something that is true for all persons at all times in all places. There are no relative truths. All truths are absolute. Now, when you say this, people are going to come back at you with some objections. In fact, this is a classic objection. If you say something's true, some people in today's postmodern culture are going to say there is no truth. Now, if you don't get anything else out of what we talk about here tonight, if you get this one concept down, it'll be worth your time. I don't care whether you're a Christian, atheist, or anywhere in between. If you learn how to identify statements like this and point out that they're self-defeating, it's going to be worth your time. What's the problem with this statement? If someone were to ever say this to you, what question should you ask them? Yeah, simply ask the question, hey, is that true? Is it true that there is no truth? Because if it's true that there is no truth, the claim there is no truth can't be true, but it claims to be true. Did I say that right? You can see this is a self-defeating statement. It's like saying I can't speak a word in English. It's like saying there are no sentences in the English language longer than 3 words. It's like saying my parents had no kids that lived. It's like saying my brother is an only child. It's like saying all generalizations are false. Some of you will get that tomorrow. These are self-defeating statements. Now, we call this process in the book of turning a claim on itself. In the book, we call it the Roadrunner tactic. You can get the book to figure out why. But with this one little tactic, you look like a super genius. How about this one? You've heard this before. There's no such thing as absolute truth. If someone ever says this to you, you should ask a question. You should apply the claim to itself. What question would you ask a person who says there's no such thing as absolute truth? Yeah, you'd simply say, hey, are you absolutely sure? Because this is an absolute truth claim, right? It defeats itself. Again, with this one little tactic, you look like a super genius. This one is my favorite one, though. It's true for you, but not for me. Well, Christianity may be true for you, but Buddhism's true for me. And what do you say to somebody who says something like that? Apply the claim to itself. This is also self-defeating. It's just a little bit more subtle. If somebody says it's true for you, but not for me, say, hey, is that true for everybody? It's true for you, but not for me, true for everybody. Because if true for you, but not for me is true for everybody, then true for you, but not for me can't be true because it's true for everybody. Did I say that right? I know that can give you intellectual constipation if you think about it long enough. But that's because it's self-defeating. It doesn't meet its own standard. Actually, there's a more fun way of dealing with this. If somebody says it's true for you, but not for me, say, sure, go try that with your bank teller. Yeah, go to your bank teller one day and say, look, the economy's down, I need some extra money. Give me $100,000 out of my account. The bank teller looks at your account and says, I'm sorry, I only have $47.16 in your account. Don't worry about it. Just say, that's true for you, but not for me. Give me the 100 grand. Are you going to get the money? No, if it's true, there's only $14 or $47.16 in your account. That's true for all people at all times in all places when referring to your account at that time. Or let's suppose you're going a little fast down Highway 90 here. You're on your way to Spokane. You're going 90 in a 55. Cop sees you, pulls you over, walks up to your car, knocks on the glass, put the window down. He goes, you were going 90 in a 55. Very easy to get out of a ticket. You simply look up at him and you go, that's true for you, but not for me. And you speed away. Can't give you a ticket if it's not true for you. No. If it's true you were going 90, that's true for all people at all times and all places when we're referring to you at that time. Now, I go to a lot of churches. I normally ask them, hey, do you believe this book is true? And most people will say yes. And then I'll ask, why? You know what answer I get more than any other? Because I have faith. Is that a good answer? Does your faith change whether or not this book is true? Does your faith change whether or not God exists or Jesus rose from the dead? No, your faith doesn't change a thing about those things. You say, why is the Bible always talking about faith then? Because there's two kinds of faith. There's belief that, and then there's belief in. Belief that is getting evidence that God exists, that Jesus rose from the dead, that the Bible is true. That's what's called apologetics. Comes from 1 Peter 3:15, a Greek word meaning not to say you're sorry, but to defend. Give evidence that it's true. But all the belief that in the world won't get you saved according to Christian theology. In order to be saved, you have to go from belief that to belief in. In fact, the better word actually in the Greek, the word is trust. It's not even faith, it's trust. After you know that Jesus has risen from the dead, then trust in him for salvation. And if you don't trust in him, then God will not force you into heaven against your will. If you don't want God now, you're not going to want him in eternity. Now, when I first met my wife about 28 years ago, I got evidence that she would be a good wife. But all the evidence in the world didn't make her my wife. I had to take a step of trust in her to ask her to be my wife. And in a momentary lapse of judgment, she said yes. But that's the difference between belief that and belief in. In fact, in the Bible, the book of James, the half-brother of Jesus who wrote that little book, says even the demons believe that God exists, but they tremble. They don't trust in. So belief that is evidence. That's reason. Belief in isn't just reason, it's also the heart. So you got the head, and then you've got the head and the heart. God, again, won't force you into heaven against your will. How about this one? You hear this a lot. You ought not judge. What's the problem with this one? Can anyone see the problem? Yeah, if somebody says you ought not judge, you ought to say, hey, isn't that a judgment? Or you might say, you ought not judge. Then why are you judging me for judging? Now, what did Jesus say about judging? Did Jesus say don't judge? No, he said, judge not, lest you be judged. By the same standard you judge others, you'll be judged by that standard. So before you try and take the speck out of your brother's eye, take the log out of your own eye first, and then you'll be better able to help your brother. Is Jesus telling us not to judge here? No, he's telling us to take the speck out of our brother's eye. That involves making a judgment. He's simply saying, get that problem out of your life first, then you'll be better able to help your brother. So this is not a command not to judge. It is a command on how to judge. In other words, don't judge hypocritically. If you've got that problem, fix it, then go help your brother. But of course, it'd be complete suicide to say, don't make judgments. You've made 100 judgments today between right and wrong, good and evil, safe choices from dangerous choices. Everybody makes judgments. Atheists make judgments. They make judgments. There's no God. Muslims make judgments. Buddhists make judgments. Agnostics make judgments. Gee, I don't know if that's a judgment. Everybody makes judgments. The only question is, are your judgments true? In fact, in John 6:24, Jesus says, stop judging by mere appearances and make a right judgment. You have to make judgments. I will say this, though. Jesus did save a very stern rebuke for people who were judgmental. And who were the judgmental ones in his day? The Pharisees. And who were the Pharisees? They were the religious and political leaders of Israel. And Jesus went after them. Yeah, they were the politicians. Rome delegated most of the authority over Israel to the Pharisees, the Sanhedrin. Jesus went after them. And he wasn't always so nice doing it. In fact, how many times you heard this? Well, that person is such a saint. He's never said a bad word about anyone. If that's the definition of a saint, Jesus was no saint. Because if you think Jesus was a sweet guy who never said a bad word about anyone, you have not read Matthew chapter 23. What does he say in Matthew chapter 23 to these politicians and religious leaders? Yeah, he says, woe to you scribes and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You strain out a gnat and swallow a camel. Oh, you look great on the outside, you're whitewashed tombs, but on the inside, you're full of dead men's bones. You go a mile to make a convert, and then once you make a convert, you make him twice as much a son of hell as you are. How will you avoid being condemned to hell? What? Sweet and gentle Jesus said this? Yes, Jesus was not Barney, okay? Can't we all just get along, boys and girls? No! He was not Mr. Rogers. Can you say kindness, boys and girls? Well, yeah, most of the time he was kind, but sometimes he was direct. He certainly didn't go around saying, this sermon brought to you by the letter E. Don't buy into the feminized Jesus. Sometimes you have to be direct. Sometimes you even have to be caustic. Jesus was on occasion. Not always, quite obviously. But he was direct, and sometimes we need to be as well. Now, there's many more of these we could do. You hear these things all the time. All truth is relative. You would ask what question? Is that a relative truth? They say all truth depends on your perspective. You would say what? Does that truth depend on your perspective? You get the idea. These are all self-defeating statements. And we call this, as I mentioned, the roadrunner tactic, which it's an easy way for you to be a lie detector. You can just turn the claim on itself. Now, this roadrunner tactic, this lie detector thing here, reminds me of Homer Simpson. Check this out.
Now we're going to run a few tests. This is a simple lie detector. I'll ask you a few yes or no questions, and you just answer truthfully. Do you understand?
Yes.
Can everybody see that's a self-defeating statement? All right, good. Now, truth does exist. Actually, there's a problem with it. Actually, there's not a problem with truth. There's a problem with us. Pascal said it very well. He said, people almost invariably arrive at their beliefs not on the basis of proof, but on the basis of what they find attractive. I normally ask atheists on college campuses, especially during the Q&A if they get a little hostile. I say, hey, do you mind if I ask you a question? Sure, go ahead. If Christianity were true, would you become a Christian? Most of them freeze. And on 3 occasions in the past 2 years, I've had atheists yell back at me, no! No. No, wait, you claim to be an atheist, a beacon of reason. And I ask you, if Christianity were true, would you become a Christian? And you say no. How's that reasonable? How's that rational? Well, it's not. The problem isn't here, the problem is here. They don't want it to be true. Because if it's true, then God's going to get in their way. And many atheists admit this. Christopher Hitchens, whom I've had the opportunity to debate a couple of times, tragically he died about 1.5 years, almost 2 years ago now. You can watch the debates for free on our website, crossexamined.org. He was a very witty guy. He had a British accent, so he sounded even more witty. But he was just angry at God. He called God a cosmic North Korean dictator, who was intruding on his sex life. Thomas Nagel at NYU said, it's not just that I don't believe in God, it's that I don't want there to be a God. I don't want the world to be that way. And he said, one of the most troubling things in my life is that some of the most intelligent people I know are religious believers. He says, that troubles me. Now, let me point out the sword cuts both ways. There's a lot of Christians who just believe in Christianity because they find it attractive. They want to be with their friends when they die or their family when they die and see Jesus and all this, and they just find this attractive. But if you would ask them, why is it true? They couldn't tell you. Thankfully, I think there's very good evidence that Christianity is true. But the point here is that too often we suppress the truth, as Paul says in Romans chapter 1, because we want to go our own way. So if you know anybody who's not a Christian and you are a Christian, ask them the question, if Christianity were true, would you become a Christian? If they hesitate at all, the problem's not here. The problem's here. They don't want it to be true. Maybe we can talk more about this during the Q&A, but we've got to go to the next section. Is it true that God exists? We know that truth exists. It's self-defeating to say it doesn't. Now, if our reasoning is good to this point, we've just refuted what's called relativism or postmodernism. So we've just rescued both the Bible and any book written by an atheist or any other book, right? We've said, yeah, if you write a book and it's true, it can be true. It really is true. The question is, what is true? Is it true that God exists? And here, we're going to give 3 arguments for the existence of a theistic God. Now, these arguments are all in the book. I'm just going to breeze through them. I don't have time to go into a lot of detail. The first is from the beginning of the universe, known as the cosmological argument. The cosmological argument shows that the universe had a beginning. If it had a beginning, it must have had a beginner. The second argument is the argument from design, known as the teleological argument. And teleological is a word, or telos is a word meaning design or purpose. It says if there's design in the universe and design in life, there must be a designer. Now, these 2 arguments have scientific evidence behind them. You can get evidence by either looking into a telescope or looking into a microscope, which we'll do. The third argument is not scientific at all. It's more philosophical in nature. Yet, it's the argument we've known since we were very small children. And it's the argument from morality known as the moral argument. And it says if there's one thing morally wrong out there, like it's wrong to torture babies for fun, or it's wrong to murder 6 million Jews in a Holocaust, then there has to be a God. Why? Because if there's no God, if there's no standard beyond humanity, then that's just your opinion against Hitler's opinion. Or it's your opinion against a baby torturer's opinion. We'll get to that argument a little bit later. We're going to start with the cosmological argument. Now, before we get into this, let me point out what I mean by a theistic God. I'm talking about a spaceless, timeless, immaterial, powerful, moral, personal, intelligent creator. Not just a creator, but a sustainer. In fact, a good analogy for a theistic God is this. A theistic God is to creation what a band is to music. If a band were to stop playing, the music would be over. If God were to stop holding the universe together and holding you and me together, we wouldn't exist either. So it's not just a cause in the beginning, God. God is a sustaining cause, like a band is to music. Now, what is the evidence that this kind of God actually exists? We'll start with the cosmological argument, and this is the argument that many say points back to the big. Now, some people are going, Frank, we're Christians in here. We don't believe in the Big Bang. You guys don't believe in the Big Bang? I believe in the Big Bang. I just know who banged it. Okay? The evidence for the Big Bang is indeed quite good. You even have atheistic scientists admitting that almost everyone now believes that the universe and time itself had a beginning at the Big Bang. Stephen Hawking, probably the most famous physicist in the world today. Of course, Hawking thinks something else caused the universe other than God, but he is admitting the data. What's the data? That space, matter, and time had a beginning. His explanation, I don't think works. He says gravity caused the universe. No, gravity had a beginning itself. Gravity couldn't have caused the universe, but we'll get into that a little bit later. Alexander Vilenkin, who's a cosmologist who teaches at Tufts University, he's an agnostic, put it this way: with the proof now in place, cosmologists can no longer hide behind the possibility of a past eternal universe. There is now no escape. They have to face the problem of a cosmic beginning. Two interesting words in this quote. The first is the word proof. Very unusual for atheists, or I should say for scientists, to use the word proof. Normally they say the evidence points to, the evidence suggests. In his opinion, it's so strong that it constitutes a proof. The second interesting word is the word problem. Why is it a problem that there's a cosmic beginning for scientists? Yeah, what would be before the beginning, ontologically before? That gets too close to the G word, God. They don't want to go there. In fact, Einstein himself knew in 1916 that his general relativity equations were showing that space-time and matter were correlative, that they had a beginning out of nothing. He didn't like it. So he put a fudge factor into his equations to keep the universe static and eternal. He wanted an eternal universe. Then some mathematicians in the 1920s noticed he had a problem, a mathematical error in his equations. The great Einstein had divided by zero. Now, what are you told in third grade? Never divide by zero. You can go straight to hell for that. Well, the great Einstein divided by zero. Later on, he repented. He said, that was the biggest mistake in my career. Now, later on, it turned out that Einstein was right to a certain extent. There is something accelerating the expansion of the universe right now. But it's not static. It's actually, this expansion of the universe right now is accelerating. The universe is getting bigger, which brings up the question, why is it so hard to find a parking space in Spokane then? I don't get it. But anyway, I don't have time to go through the evidence for this. It's all in chapter 3 of the book. It's delineated by the acronym SURGE. If you get the book, you'll see what the evidence is. The E stands for Einstein's theory of general relativity. It's all in the book. I don't have time to get into it now, but all I'm pointing out here is even atheists agree with this. So we don't need to go through the evidence right here. The evidence shows that space, time, and matter had a beginning. What we're going to do is go to the conclusion. If the universe had a beginning, then it must have had a beginner. The evidence leaves us with one of the following two options. Either no one created something out of nothing, which is the atheistic view, or someone created something out of nothing, which is the theistic view. Now, which view is more reasonable? That no one created something out of nothing, or that someone created something out of nothing?
Either way, it's something from nothing.
It is something from nothing. Number one, obviously, is a miracle. In fact, this happened at Texas A&M. At Texas A&M, I asked the question, an atheist said, well, I think number one is more reasonable. It is a miracle. but there's no miracle worker. In fact, I said to him, I said, wait, you think number one's more miraculous or is more reasonable? I said, okay, let's look at number two first. Number two is a miracle. Someone created something out of nothing, but at least you got someone. You got a miracle worker. Now you can ask who made God if you want. We can get into that later. But at least here you got a miracle worker, right? But number one is a miracle with no miracle worker. That's absurd. I said to show you how seriously everybody in this room takes the law of causality. And by the way, the law of causality does not say everything has a cause. There has to be an uncaused first cause. Aristotle knew this, Plato knew, there had to be an unmoved mover, in other words. So not everything has a cause, but everything that comes to be has a cause. And so I said to the Texas A&M audience that night, I said, to show you how seriously everyone takes the law of causality, that everything that comes to be has a cause, and that things don't pop into existence out of nothing by nothing, there is nobody sitting in this auditorium tonight who is currently worried that as you sit here, a hippopotamus has appeared out of nothing in your dorm room and is currently defecating on the carpet. Right? You don't worry about that. You don't worry about it right now that some raging Bengal tiger is just going to appear right here and start devouring people, right? Or a land shark is going to come in here and just eat you, right? You don't worry about that. Why? Because you know that things don't come into existence out of nothing by nothing without a cause. In fact, here's a good question to ask an atheist. If there is no God, why is there something rather than nothing at all? In other words, if there is no God, why does anything exist? And if things pop into existence out of nothing by nothing, why doesn't everything pop into existence out of nothing by nothing? Why don't Mercedes-Benzes and MacBook Pros pop into existence out of nothing by nothing? Could have saved me a couple grand there if it would. No, the most reasonable conclusion is that someone created something out of nothing. Now, there's a lot more to that argument. Again, I don't have time. Let's go to the design argument, the teleological argument. And this argument says that not only did the universe explode into being out of nothing, it did so with extreme precision, and it's fine-tuned for life right now. This is sometimes called the anthropic principle. Anthropos is a Greek word meaning mankind, that the universe is precisely fine-tuned for mankind to exist here on Earth. And it's also fine-tuned for there to be chemistry, because if there were just a couple of minor changes among some of the constants in the universe, there wouldn't even be chemistry. We might just have helium or hydrogen or something. We wouldn't have the heavier elements. And in fact, let's start with Stephen Hawking. Again, an atheist. He put it this way. He said, if the expansion rate of the universe was different by 1 part in 1,000 million, a second after the Big Bang, the universe would have collapsed back on itself or never developed galaxies. You change the expansion rate, that infinitesimal amount, we're not here. Now, you can't make a cosmic evolutionary argument here. Why? Because these were the initial conditions. In other words, somebody just appeared to start the universe this precise way. So the universe was not a chaotic explosion. The Big Bang was not a chaotic explosion. It was the creation event that was shepherded by some intelligence, it appears. And that intelligence exists to this day because the gravitational force, if it were altered by more than 1 part in 10 to the 40, we wouldn't be here. Now, what's 1 part in 10 to the 40? That's 1 part in 1 with 40 zeros following it. You say, Frank, I can't get my head around that number. Neither can I. Let me give you an illustration. Take a tape measure and stretch it across the entire known universe. By the way, that's a long way, okay? Set the gravitational force at a particular inch mark on that tape measure. I realize gravity is not measured in inches. This is just to give you a scale idea of your mind about what 1 in 10 to the 40 precision is. If you were to move the strength of gravity 1 inch in either direction across that entire scale, we wouldn't be here. That's how highly fine-tuned the gravitational force is. Now, there's only 3 possible explanations for that value being right there. One is physical necessity. It had to be there. No, it didn't have to be there. Could have been here, could have been there, could have been 10,000 miles that way. The second is chance. I don't have enough faith to believe that. In fact, chance isn't a cause. Chance is a word we use to describe mathematical possibilities. Chance is a word we use to cover our ignorance when we don't know what the real cause is. It's not a word, it's not a causal power. It seems to me the best option is the third option, design. Somebody put it there and is holding it there. In fact, you ever thought of this? Do you know everything physical changes? Why don't the laws of nature change? Why don't the laws of logic change? Because somebody's holding them steady. That's what we mean by a theistic God who is to the universe as a band is to music. If he were to stop, the universe would be over. The band were to stop, the music would be over. Same thing is true with regard to our solar system. Our solar system appears to be designed for us to exist in it. Where are we, by the way, in the solar system here? Third rock from the sun. If we were just a little bit closer to or a little bit further away, we wouldn't be here. A little bit closer to, we'd burn up. A little bit further away, we'd freeze. We are what scientists call the Goldilocks zone. It is not too hot. It is not too cold. It is the axial tilt, 23.5 degrees. If you were to change that slightly, we wouldn't exist. Earth rotation, 24 hours. Change that slightly, we wouldn't exist. The size and distance of the moon from us, if you were to change that slightly, we wouldn't exist. In fact, if Jupiter was not in its current orbit, we wouldn't be here. Why not? What does Jupiter do? Someone said it. Yeah, it collects the asteroids. Its gravitational force is so strong, and by the way, so is Saturn's, that it attracts most of the meteors and space junk to it rather than us. In fact, if you take a close-up look at Jupiter, you know what these purple marks are? Those purple marks are comet fragment strikes that are bigger than the Earth. Thank God for Jupiter. If Jupiter wasn't there, we wouldn't be here. Saturn, the same thing. In fact, you want to see the size of Jupiter? Check this out. There's Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Earth. Look at poor Pluto. You know, Pluto recently has been demoted as a planet. I don't know about you, but I think it's size discrimination. Jupiter attracts everything. In fact, I saw in the Drudge Report not long ago, it said, scientists think major meteor to hit Earth in 2040. I am rooting for Jupiter. Check this out. Sun, Jupiter, Earth. You can hardly see Pluto. Check this out. Here's the sun over here. Jupiter is 1 pixel in size on this scale. Earth is invisible. Pluto, forget about it. That's Arcturus. That's another star in our galaxy. This is just in our galaxy, by the way. You got Arcturus? Check this out. Where's Arcturus now? There's Arcturus right there, to the left of the white star Rigel. The sun is 1 pixel in size on this scale. Jupiter is invisible. Earth, Pluto, forget about them. This is Antares, another star in our galaxy. In fact, if the Earth was the size of a golf ball, this star, Betelgeuse, would be 5 or 6 Empire State Buildings high. The heavens are awesome. Another anthropic principle. The average distance between stars in our galaxy is 30 trillion miles, and all that distance is necessary for us to exist here on Earth. If you were to change that distance slightly, gravitational fields would be distorted and we couldn't stay in orbit, we wouldn't be here. Now, how far is 30 trillion miles? Far. Take you at least 2 tanks of gas on a Toyota Prius to go 30 trillion miles.
And that's not true.
Yeah. That is if the gas pedal doesn't stick, right? I was out in the Desert Museum a number of years ago in Tucson, Arizona. Have you guys ever been out in the Desert Museum? If you're ever out in Tucson, if you go out there at night, on a clear night, you can see an amazing number of stars. And we were out there on a clear night about 15 years ago. And the guide said, you know, it's so clear tonight. If we look up at 9:03, we're going to see the Space Shuttle in orbit. I said, oh, come on. We're not going to see the Space Shuttle. It's only 120 feet long. It's 350 miles up. We're not going to see it. Oh, me of little faith. At 9:03, the guy goes, look! And we look up in the sky about 70 degrees above the horizon. There's an object streaking out of the west, relative to us, about like this. I mean, it is really cooking. When it got right about here, it disappeared. I don't know whether Scotty beamed it up or what. But it was screaming across the sky. Actually, what happened was, even though it was dark where we were, the space shuttle was so high up that the sun was still reflecting off it. And then when it got out of range of the sun, we couldn't see it anymore. Now, when the space shuttle was in orbit, the space shuttle was traveling at about 18,000 miles an hour. That's 5 miles per second. You got trouble getting to work in the morning? Take the Space Shuttle. You'll be 5 miles a second. Think about that. You'd be from here to Spokane in what, 8 seconds? It's amazing. Now, I did a little calculation to try and figure out how long would it take us if we can get in the Space Shuttle and go from our star, the sun, to another star an average distance away just in our galaxy, 30 trillion miles. How long do you think it would take us? A couple years. It would 15,000 years. It would take us 201,450 years. That means if you got in the Space Shuttle at the time of Christ and started traveling from our star, the sun, to another star an average distance away, just in our galaxy, going 5 miles a second, you'd be less than 1/100th of the way there right now. And we're going to explore space. No, we're not. We're not going anywhere in space. Who'd like to go to the next nearest star? We'll go. Get in, kids. Are we almost there yet, Dad? Another 200,000 years. Play some more Xbox. How many stars are out there? The number of stars that are out there are about equivalent to the number of grains of sand on all the beaches on all the earth. See this picture on the left? This is from the ground. You see that square right there? That's this square from the Hubble Space Telescope. Those are galaxies, stars, heavenly bodies. The heavens are awesome. February 1st, 2003, President Bush went into the East Room in the White House. Saturday morning, 9 a.m., they turned the TV camera on. Every major network carried his address. Saturday morning, 9 a.m., why? The president looked in the camera and said, "My fellow Americans, this morning, our country experienced a great tragedy. Upon re-entry into the atmosphere, the Space Shuttle Columbia burned up in the skies over Texas. There are no survivors. The Columbia is lost." The president then went on to quote from Isaiah chapter 40 and verse 25. Why Isaiah chapter 40? Because in Isaiah chapter 40, beginning at verse 25, God is speaking according to Isaiah. And what does God say? "To whom will you compare me, or who is my equal, says the Holy One." In other words, you want to know what I'm like? Here's a comparison. "Lift your eyes and look to the heavens. Who created all these stars and named them one by one? Because of his great power and mighty strength, not one of them is missing." The president looked back in the camera and said, "The same God that created and named all those stars is the same God that created and knows the names of the 7 astronauts who perished today. While they did not return safely home to us, we can all now pray they've all returned safely home." You want to know what God's like? Most Christians have the wrong idea of what God's like. We think God is like a big angel. No, God is not a big angel. You want to know what God's like? Remove all limits from your mind. That's God. If he's an ounce of any attribute, he's infinite in that attribute. If he's an ounce of love, he's infinite love. An ounce of justice, infinite justice. He is the standard by which everything else is measured. Why is there a second commandment? At least one reason why is there a second commandment. Thou shalt make no graven image. Because any image you make of an infinite being necessarily limits his majesty. You can't draw a picture of infinity. Everything in our experience is finite. God is infinite. God has no limits. The closest thing in our experience to infinity are the heavens. That's why the Bible says the heavens declare the glory of God. You want to know what I'm like? Look to the heavens. What do you see when you look to the heavens? Stars equivalent to grains of sand on all the beaches on all the earth. 200,000 years at 5 miles a second between those stars. Infinite from our perspective. That's why Psalm 103 verse 11 says, "God's love to those that fear him exceeds the height of the heavens above the earth." How high are the heavens above the earth? From our perspective, infinite. That's the point.